I want to welcome Professor Channapatna Prakash to our class. You've just heard his terrific lecture on how genetic engineering can be used to improve crop plants. And I'm delighted to be able to interview him today and see what his personal feelings are in how this technology can be used to improve humanity. Professor Prakash, thank you so much. I cannot tell you what an honor it is for us to have you here and be able to talk to the students in this class. Can you tell me how you even got interested early in your life in plant genetic engineering and plants and developing world?
Well, I come from India and grew up in Bangalore. In the 60s, when I was a little child, India experienced a great drought for 3 years, and we had a very poor food production at the time. So much so that United States Food Aid, it literally dozens and dozens of shipload of grains that was sent with American generosity, helped save millions of Indian lives. And I think probably as a child, I was exposed to that. And then I also saw that how India, by using genetics, by helping develop better varieties of crop plants, we had a green revolution. And I majored in agriculture and then wanted to again specialize in genetics, and naturally as a way to follow up on the great excitement that we had seen in India because of green revolution. And at the time we really did not have genetic engineering when I studied. And then when this biotechnology rolled over, it was natural for me to learn some of the techniques of biotechnology, because I see that as really as an extension of genetics. It's one other tool.
How has your career marched step by step with the evolution of plant genetic engineering as a tool to improve crop plants?
Well, I think it is more or less, it's gone in a very parallel fashion. As you know, as one of the founding fathers of plant genetic engineering, you have start this amazing area of plant biotechnology in a way that when we were just coming out of graduate school in the mid-80s, this was a very exciting field for a lot of us to get involved in. And so I have seen myself moving from genetics to genetic engineering and to more into genomics lately. And that's how this, as you know, the science has progressed here. And there's some wonderful applications of the science, the technological applications that touching the lives of so many people today. And I think that is very heartening for us in this area.
You know, you mentioned that you're from India. How has science, particularly genetics and plant genetic engineering, really affected over the last 100 years the lives of just everyday people in India and perhaps even in the rest of the developing world?
Oh, definitely. I think most people do not recognize. We all readily relate to the medical advances and other technological advances in electronics, computers that have touched our lives and made it better. But most individuals do not readily recognize how that while the world population went from perhaps about 2 billion in the early 1900s to 7 billion that we have today, and yet despite this huge increase in population, we have increased the food production, so much so that percentage of people who are undernourished has come down dramatically in the past 30, 40 years, despite the increase in population. And that's because how as scientists have used genetics in a very meaningful manner to develop better varieties of rice, better varieties of wheat and vegetable, so much so that countries like India now and China produce 4 times as much food today than they were when I was a child. And in my own lifetime, I have seen this major transformation. And because these countries were able to take care of their food issue, then they're able to move forward in other areas like information technology and manufacturing, that you see the tremendous prosperity in China and India today.
Have you seen that because of the use of good genetics, the cost of food to people in the developing world has gone down, in particular India?
Definitely. The percentage of family income that we spend on food around the world has come down. And so the cost of food has not only kept stable, kept lower than the inflation, and in many instances it has been much, much less, so much so that because we are able to produce more food, it has remained more affordable. But of course, we have seen in the past 3-4 years, food has increased a lot more, and that is due to a variety of factors. What is important to recognize is that we just cannot be complacent about it, and we need to keep working on our science to come up with more innovative ways to produce food, not just produce more food, but produce food in a more sustainable manner with a smaller footprint on the environment, if you will.
If you could project to 100 years into the future, I mean, after all, it was only 100 years ago that the word gene was invented.
Exactly.
It was only about 100 years ago that Mendel's laws were just rediscovered and being applied to plants. So if you could project 100 years from now, what do you think you can see on the horizon in terms of plant biotech, agriculture, improvement of humanity, the use of good science, and improving crops? What is your vision for the future?
Well, I think as we look forward, we can keep reminding ourselves how we were 100 years ago, and so trying to think backwards and then project into the future. I do believe that we will meaningfully use these tools of genetics in a manner that will help the humanity in a very profound way. And in 100 years from now, world population is probably 9 billion or more, and challenges of feeding humanity are going to be much more profound in a way that we need to produce all this food and quality food with less land, with less water, perhaps even with less labor, even with the increasing population, because so much of migration to urban areas is happening, and using less chemicals. And we not only have to produce more food, but better quality food, more nutritious food, in a way that I think the extensions of genetics that we see, the genetic engineering, the genomics, and the bioinformatics, and in 100 years, it's going to be very difficult to imagine what all the technological developments will occur. But I am positive that we would integrate these tools in a meaningful manner to improve our food production.
But if you have this fantastic vision, and you see all these positive things, it's almost like an organic farmer's dream in many respects. Why such pushback on this technology? Why is it that a significant fraction of the world doesn't even use this technology, and in many respects has vilified this technology and vilified scientists such as you and I who use this technology?
That's right. I think that's it's an unfortunate thing that people who are trying to use this technology to advance food production are seen in a negative manner. But I do not believe that there is a global opposition to this technology. And even in Europe, where this technology is seen in a negative light, I do believe it's a small group of people who are working against this technology in trying to slow down the application of this technology for whatever reason, and these groups have a vested interest and have been very effective in slowing down this technology. Many companies, as you know, in Europe have closed the shop and moved out. And but I believe Europe right now, is wealthy. It has enough food, and so they may believe that they do not need this technology. But with the unfortunate ripple effect of European rejection of biotechnology in agriculture is that many African countries, many Asian countries which look up to Europe are also doing similar. They are not using this technology to help increase their food production, in so much so that it has kept many parts of this world still backward, with low productivity in agriculture, tremendous problems in feeding their people, and some of that could simply be solved by using genetics and other modern tools that many farmers in the Western world already do.
What do you think the ultimate causes of this anti-scientific thought is?
Well, we have seen from the history that when we have anti-scientific thought, like a great example that you talk about in your own class is the Lysenko, how he became extremely powerful in Russia, so much so that they banned genetics and they sent geneticists to prison. And you explained it so well in your class that it took something like 40 years for Russians to overcome that backwardness that had pulled down. And even today, Russia, with all its vast amount of land, is an importer of food. Ironically, it imports wheat from India. And so world will pay a price, and we cannot afford to do that. When you have a technology that could help solve a lot of your problems in agriculture, and then it is being neglected, not for scientific reason, not because we have any problems of issue of safety with that, just because of visceral emotional feelings that it creates, and how that has been used and manipulated to oppose this technology, I think is a sad testament to the power of some of the groups that oppose this technology.
Do you think this is going to fade away with time?
I think so.
And what do you think will cause that decay, essentially?
Time itself, there are many of the groups that are opposed to technology. The biotechnology will probably find other things to oppose and will move on. And then I believe in overall the larger society, when it understands the benefits that technology can bring, and also feels comfortable with the risks and the problems that may be associated with technology, in that it is manageable or it's minimal or even non-existent. And like this has happened with many technologies beforehand. And when society overall recognizes that, then they'll move forward in embracing this technology in a meaningful manner, in a way to harness all the potential and yet keep any risks and negative outcome of that to a bare minimum.
How do you think this technology has helped people just here in the United States in 2012?
Well, you see in the US and many countries where this technology is adapted, we have literally saved hundreds of millions of pounds of pesticide from being sprayed. So Americans care for the environment, and when they recognize that so much pesticide is not being sprayed now on their crops, and also much of the land, we plant soybean on 70 million acres in this country, and 90% of the soybean today is they planted herbicide tolerant crops, so much so that farmers don't have to till the land, and so there is a greater less soil erosion on these lands, and there's large environmental benefit, and the farmers are doing fewer sprays today, and so much so there is less carbon emission from the farms. There is greater biodiversity. So in future, farmers are going to be planting crops that are provide more nutritional food, crops that can help cope with the changes in the climate. So when Americans understand that there is not only a great environmental benefit, an economic benefit to the society, but also a very large food safety benefit and nutritional benefit, I am sure they will see the value of this technology in a very big way.
Do you see all the exciting developments in genomics and sequencing and all the plant genomes that are being sequenced that ultimately came from the invention of genetic engineering? Do you see that as something which is going to really enhance what we're going to be able to do in plants in the future? Is this?
Oh, certainly. I think from the research output of labs like yours are helping us to understand how plants work in such an amazing manner, and also providing very valuable tools. I think in the future what that kind of research would lead us to is to see how we can turn on and off the native genes. So we may not even have to go the route of introducing foreign genes, because so much of plants have embedded genes already that could perhaps we can just turn it on, as we already seen, to increase their cold tolerance, perhaps to produce a vitamin or so that it is not doing so anymore, in a way that this is nothing but classical breeding, but in a very directed, precise manner. And I think the technology move in that direction in a way that we would be able to develop food that is tailored in a manner for a person's individual constituents, for instance. In a way, all of that would help people live longer and live better.
But in all of these positive things, in all of the work and all of your visions and all of the thinking that you've done in this technology, in your own mind, is there any downside? I mean, after all, you're one of the world's experts in this technology. Do you ever think about any downside or the flip side of the coin? Are there any of your greatest fears that something could come out of the box that we can't expect?
No, not really. I have debated this with many individuals who are very knowledgeable and yet skeptical of this technology. I cannot think of one single trait that will cause the problems that you're kind of thinking about using this technology that could not have been done with the classical breeding. Because many of the scenarios, many of the problems that we worry about genetic engineering, such as introducing toxins into our food system, or our plants becoming more invasive, or gene flow issues, all of that have occurred with classical plant breeding, with conventionally bred varieties. And we have learned how to manage them, we have learned how to minimize them in a way that it is not a major problem. And so I do believe genetic engineering is similar in many respects in the amount of risks that we have, and in more so we're able to manage that because we have a very strong safety testing and regulation in place. But my only fear of biotechnology is that it is not being used. Because just imagine it, one gene that we found through classical studies in rice helped feed 1 billion more people today. And with all the problems of classical breeding, it took 15 years to develop those rice varieties, and yet they were able to make such an impact. Now, from the research of scientists like you and your lab, we have knowledge of literally thousands and thousands of genes, and we have the capacity to put those genes from rice into wheat or any plant. And so it's not a fear, but my feeling of certain sadness is that with all this potential, we still are not able to use it in a meaningful manner.
And
not because of science, but because of political reasons.
And why do you think that is? Is that due to regulation? Is that due to anti-scientific thought? What are the...
I think it's a combination. I mean, I don't think it's not anti-scientific thought as much, but although that has clearly impacted how many countries perceive biotechnology, and so much so they put a lot of roadblocks into the use of this technology. I think it's a combination of factors. A regulation, very high regulation that is very burdensome, very expensive, and much of it is completely unnecessary from a science point of view, has clearly prevented many countries and also even many small companies, even in the United States, from developing products and bringing it into the market because it just costs so much. And there is so much risk involved. There is a lot of uncertainty that your product is not going to be accepted in export markets, such as Europe, for instance, prevented. That is one. And I also believe that because this technology was opposed for a lot of by a lot of vested interests who had an economic interest in opposing it, has also helped slow this
such as the organic farmers.
Well, I think the natural food and organic farm sector is just clearly one of them. They have, and many groups have funded efforts to oppose this. Like what happened in India is a good example, where Indians with tremendous success in BT cotton, 95% of Indian farmers use this cotton, brought down the overall use of pesticides in the whole country by about 25%, and they doubled the cotton production. India, from a cotton importing country, has become a cotton exporting country. Despite all that, when India tries to introduce a genetically modified eggplant with the same gene as it was in cotton, it was stopped because of a tremendous opposition that was put up by the vested interests in opposing this technology.
But you feel that these vested interests will fade with time eventually.
I am hoping that, and I think there is certain reason for this optimism that over time, I think these little groups will dissipate, and then we will see the technology being used for its full potential for what it is.
So if I could just sum up, your view would be that plant genetic engineering and plant biotechnology has had a huge impact on crop improvement throughout the world and has really improved people's lives dramatically. And that your vision for the future is?
I think we have only seen the tip of the iceberg. And when we try to bring about the vast potential of this technology further up, we would see much greater progress, and especially in the way this technology will touch the lives of people in the developing world, where they need the increased food production and all the potential this technology can do to them.
So it's a second or a third and a fourth green revolution.
I hope so. I think it's like Professor Swaminathan keeps saying, this is going to be an evergreen revolution, one that is fueled by the gene revolution, which will which will hopefully we'll learn from some of the mistakes that we did with Green Revolution, and then this will help move forward in a much more responsible and meaningful manner.
Well, thank you very, very, very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We've been delighted to be able to have Professor Prakash here to talk with us in person about what his personal views are and how he views the technology that he's been so much involved with and helped so many people throughout the world. Thank you again so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.